Greetings, everybody. This is Leviathan here, and today we've got something cool that happened yesterday. So, December 22nd, which is yesterday as the recording of this video, we had a Diablo Immortal Ask Me Anything style of replies from the developers of Diablo Immortal, Wyatt Cheng, who's the lead designer, and Caleb Arsenault, who is the lead producer. Hope I didn't butcher your last name, my friend. So they were in the Discord for Diablo Immortal answering a bunch of questions that a few of us that have had access to this technical alpha were able to throw, and a lot of us crowdsourced from our communities, streams, basically anywhere we were seeing a lot of questions, and there were quite a few good ones, and also some sort of like key questions or repetitive ones that kept coming up. All those got thrown at the developers, and they literally answered every single question. So today I thought I would hop on this video to basically go over the answers and give some of my thoughts on it. There are some really particularly cool things about the future of Diablo Immortal that are hinted at here, and just see what you guys think about it too. So feel free to hop into the comment section as we go through these questions. I'll put a link to this. A shout out to Echo Hack for putting together the AMA from the Discord to Reddit for the world to see, and make it easier for us content creator folks to take it and run with it. So yeah, I'll put a link to this in the video description. Again, hop in the comments, let me know what you think, and let's dig into it. So this is again a recap of the AMA for Diablo Immortal, the technical alpha, and a lot of questions here. So first one was about seasonal buffs or events being in Diablo Immortal. And then Caleb mentioned that we're looking to have a variety of cool events. Right now, the one that's in there is challenge rifts, and these are essentially like the greater rift system of Diablo Immortal. It resets every week, and there are rewards tied to the ranking that you get. So it's really cool. It's also per class too. So there's Demon Hunter, Monk, Barbarian, and Wizard in Diablo Immortal Technical Alpha right now. So you could literally be on multiple boards going for rankings, getting rewards. It's so cool. But it sounds like there's going to be more like this as well in the future. So he mentions Challenge Rift as an example. It says the backend that drives that event can and will be used to run new events in the future. Maybe we can make Halloween a special thing. A lot of people keyed in on this and they were like, ooh, Halloween, why so specific with the response there? Does that mean, October 2021 release date or something? I love how the community will find something and just run with it. Okay, maybe. I don't know. There's no official release date yet, but if that's a sign, then cool. I'm down. And to be fair, I do feel like that is a reasonable release date because you're looking at Technical Alpha right now at the end of 2020. Let's say by BlizzConline, they decide to do a bigger testing round. Maybe it's still alpha, maybe it's early beta. And then as the year goes in 2021, if development continues well, testing goes well, I could really see them being like, all right, let's release at the end of the year, or at least by early 2022. So keep your fingers crossed if you're really looking forward to this. Next up was if there will be a PvP reward system. So right now, Caleb says we have more plans for PvP that we can't talk about just yet. I hope you guys have been able to check out the Leviathan Zone trial. One thing I can say now is none of our PvP plans are going to move the game towards an esport. They want the Diablo Immortal just to be a fun place that players of all types can gather and have a good time killing each other. So sounds like there will be the ability to PvP. It won't be a very like codified, balanced sort of thing that you can make an esport around. And there will potentially be more things. Right now, the thing that he mentions, that Leviathan Zone trial, is that there is a thing in the game right now where in this certain zone, every 3 hours in the game, a chest will spawn, and it has a guarantee to drop a legendary in it. So the chest spawns, and it also spawns a boss that you have to kill. When this happens, any player that's in the zone like goes hostile against other players. So you can fight each other, you have to kill the boss, and then anyone can click on the chest, but there's a timer to open the chest. I think it's about like 10 seconds of channeling. And during that time, you have to hope that you've killed everybody so no one can interrupt you opening the chest, or that you can just sneak it and somehow nobody hits you and stops you from continuing the opening process. But it's pretty cool. Like you can make a party as well, either prior to or as you arrive there, and the countdown's going down before the chest spawns. And if you're in a party, you can't attack each other, but you can attack anyone else who's not in your party. So it's kind of a cool PvP thing. And maybe there'll be more events like that. I guess we'll have to wait and see. but it sounds like there's at least going to be something else that's coming. And in the game, there are also PvP stats. Like on the gear, there's fixes that reduce damage from other players, give you more damage for party members near you, which doesn't necessarily have to be PvP, I suppose. You can do that with PvE as well. But yeah, there's a couple of other interesting things, so we'll see how that one develops. This is a mention on the next question with runes, and that right now they're just a reagent, essentially. So there are runes in the game, but your only utilization of them is to make legendary gems based on having a certain amount and the right type of runes. So that someone wanted to know, what about rune words and what made you not include rune words? Wyatt answered that there's no current plan for those. They're super cool, but the functionality overlaps with legendary items. We wanted to include runes as a consistent thematic element, so we're using them as a reagent in crafting recipes. Seems cool. And so I can see why people, of course, are like D2 fanatics in particular, love rune words. They love the ability to like go and find these things to make an item and design it and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like it would fit in the scope of Diablo Immortal, mainly because the way that the sockets work, you either have legendary gems for your sockets or just regular gems for your sockets. I mean, they could rework it that runes could go in those, but it doesn't sound like they're going to do that. So, you know, no rune words, but well, maybe we'll see for Diablo 4, because we know there's going to be runes in there, and they will do stuff like they have trigger effects and different things. So it kind of also further shows you that there is a difference between Diablo Immortal, Diablo 4. Like, not all decisions are going to align and be exactly the same. My next question that popped up was about hardcore, because a lot of players were asking, will there be hardcore in Diablo Immortal? And I wanted to know, if not, then why? And so Wyatt said that Diablo Immortal extends character progression and also is an inherently social experience. So we want to encourage players to join guilds and build in-game friendships. Having your buddy permanently disappear from your guild because their character died in an unfortunate and gruesome way could be fun for some, but it's not the experience that we're looking for, so no plans for hardcore. And I could see, even when I was trying to answer the question, I could see like pros and cons for hardcore, because it's like a quintessential thing for Diablo. But for a game like this, I don't know. There's a lot of potential issues, because you're playing on mobile, right? So you're going to be moving around. Connection could get lost. You could lag a bit. You die from that. You know, we already die from lag and stuff in D3, and it feels pretty bad. So imagine that on the phone as well. And also, I can just imagine if you spent some money to get some like legendary crests or something, you're running an Elder Rift, then you die in that. Now you've kind of like lost your money in a way, and that could feel bad too. So I could see it being a mode that would like make people not want to spend money, or I don't know. Like, there's a lot of issues around it. One thing that he does mention here about joining guilds, something I didn't realize, is that guilds are per character. So you can have your overall account, you can have your overall like different characters, but they can each be in different guilds. So I can have my Demon Hunter be in a guild that I made, and then have my Monk be in a separate guild and stuff. So that's kind of cool. But I guess that's what he means by, you know, if you lose that character, now you're out of the guild, because only that character was part of it, not your account. Alright, next is Mogomama's question. Is there a reason that some legendary gear needs to be identified and some doesn't? And this basically is just that it's a bug. They want it to be that all the legendaries that drop are un-ID'd, so you have to go to the identifier in a town or like an outpost and have them identify it. Some legendaries that you get from the battle pass, like the free track, are going to come identified. So that's just a bug. Next, I was asking about the sounds in the game, because this was a question from the community as to whether they would be placeholders or there to stay, because there's a lot of sounds that are from like D2, D3, like very nostalgic, traditional Diablo sounds. And Wyatt said, all the sounds you hear are intended to stay unless we have a reason to change it. Personally, I love the nostalgic sound of the gold falling, and insert a bad joke about the sound being the same because Immortal is taking place between D2 and D3. So the sound of gold dropping on the ground is correct for the timeline. Consistencies, right? So there's a very quick answer to that one, that the sounds are probably all gonna stay the same. It seems like there's a combination of like old sounds that have been brought in from old games, and then also some newer sounds for things that just, you know, didn't have a drop sound because they didn't exist in other games. And then I had another question here from the community as well about transmog. Is there going to be a transmog system or a way to customize characters so that people can differentiate themselves? And Caleb came in to say, we're not currently looking at a transmog system, but we have a couple things that are going to be similar. First one is that we're looking at a way for you to manage your legendary powers more easily. No details to share about that right now. which is interesting that he mentions the legendary powers in a transmog slash customization conversation. I hope that means maybe there's going to be like an armory or some sort of thing, because that's something I'm getting into now. Is like I have a setup for when I'm doing like my regular farming. I have a setup for when I want to try challenge rifts. And I'm sure like as PvP and things develop, you're going to have different types of setups. And right now, changing between them all is very cumbersome, changing your skills, your legendary powers, etc. So maybe there's something here. Could be tied to items, I don't know. And then the second part he mentions that we're planning to have full body cosmetic outfits. These are going to be available for real money purchases, in addition to being on the paid track of the Battle Pass. So this confirms that there will be cosmetics in the game that you can purchase for support of the game, or just to make your character awesome. Next, from SVR, what are your plans to circumvent or restrict power creep that's inherent in ARPGs? So this ends up being a bit of a technical answer. 2 parts from Wyatt. He says, we plan to cap Paragon progression and then gradually raise that cap with each new content update. So right now what that means is that there are a bunch of Paragon trees that are planned to be launched with Diablo Immortal, and he's going to, or the developers are going to make it so that as they add content to the game, they could add another tree, and then that would increase the amount of your usage for Paragon. Like you would be able to get more Paragon and then spec into those trees as well too. But prior to that, there was sort of like a cap each time that you reach the final tree of the Paragon system. So that's pretty interesting. And he mentions here that legendary powers are designed to scale, and they will carry you forward to the higher level versions after content updates as well. And gems and legendary gems can also be unsocketed and carried into a new sweet item in the future. So the second part here would be with regards to the numerical tuning. Without diving too deep into math, one of the reasons that we have attack and offense rating as well as life and defense rating is so that these attributes can scale linearly over time while still making you feel more powerful. Normally you need exponential numerical growth to really feel a power difference, but the dual attribute system should allow us to avoid crazy large damage numbers over time. And so the way I'm starting to understand how this works is that you basically have stats that give you damage and also increase your life and things like that. And then there's this other system called offense rating and defense rating, where the enemies have a certain defense rating, and based on what your offense rating is as a character, you get offense rating from all your main stats, or from all your stats, like from fortitude, from willpower, etc. So you're always kind of increasing it as you increase your main stats. It's a comparative system. So if the enemy has a higher defense rating than your offense rating, then you're going to do reduced damage to it by a percentage. And if you eventually overtake their defense rating with your offense rating, then you do a percentage increased damage to those enemies. So it's almost like a monster level kind of system where you need to keep track. Not keep track, but you need to keep in touch with those numbers so that you can continue to progress. So that's why you might see someone that's doing a challenge rift at challenge rift 40, they're hitting for like 100 damage and critting for like 500 damage, where normally you might see them in like Hell 2 regular farming and they're hitting for like 10,000 damage. Like the numbers will shift because those ratings are changing. As you go up in the higher difficulty in the challenge rift, the ratings are going to get higher, so you have to compensate for that. So that's that without diving too much deeper into that. And that's how I'm starting to understand it, but maybe there's more to the system as well too. Next, I asked about the Bestiary and if it was going to have like statistical details to help us sort of gear against it, because there's things in the game like armor piercing, and it's like, well, how good is that? Do we know if enemies have, like, how much armor they have? Like, is it going to be useful to know like a certain mob set has higher armor, so then I'm going to look for that mob set in my challenge rift and then stack armor pen or something? So I just want to know if there's going to be a lot more info, or if the Bestiary would be more like flavor or lore based. And Caleb basically confirms that it's going to be mostly lore based. It's about showing the lore of the creatures, then gameplay related details. And then I asked about the power stat on items. So if you look at a item in Diablo Immortal, it has a bunch of stats, right? It has its legendary power, it has all sorts of other things going on with it. And then at the top, there's just a power rating and a specific number. And I was like, well, where does this power number come from? Because I was looking at an item, and I was looking at almost exactly the same item, and the game was telling me that the new one I had found was an upgrade, even though as a player was looking at it, I was like, but I'm pretty sure this is not an upgrade, because I lose like certain things that I care about, and then also the like magic power that I get from it isn't as good as the one I'm using right now. So how's the game calculating this? And so I needed to know, and Wyatt was like, Basically, power is calculated from all the stats on the item. Attributes like strength, int, fortitude, spirit, willpower, etc. are all 15 points each. And then your particular build might value one attribute over another, but we didn't want to try and guess which one you're looking for, so they're weighted equally. And then there are extra points that are added for magic and legendary properties. We try not to make judgment calls on which property you might want for your characters. The points added varies with the level of the item, but not with the property itself. And then finally, sockets are given a base score. He believes it's 48, but don't quote him on it, to make sockets appealing. But ultimately, the power of an item is supposed to give a rough gauge of which item might be better for somebody that doesn't want to do a lot of math, but the actual best item might differ for somebody that wants to do a lot of min-maxing. And that's essentially the conclusion that I came to after I was looking at the items for a while. I was like, okay, there's like sort of a general scoring of items, and if you're just trying to like go, I want the green arrow that says it's better for me, I can just click on that and equip that item. But it turns out that you can be lied to by the system basically, because it might tell you, yes, green arrow, good, put this item on, but you could actually be effectively making your character worse if certain stats that exist on the item you just replaced were better for the build that you're doing. So that's kind of where I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the system a bit more. So that was that one. Dreadscythe asked about reforging and whether it's locked at 45, the current level cap in technical alpha, and wonders if that's a plan to carry forward with 60, or can we get access to it at lower levels. And Caleb mentions that it's actually that reforging is available when you get a legendary item to rank 6. It might not be common to get to that point before max level due to the amount of crafting materials needed to rank up your items. And yes, ranking up items is super intensive. It takes a lot of crafting materials, especially the yellow one. I think it's called like Enchanted Dust. That's the one that we're all starved for right now in technical alpha. And this is sort of just like a technical question, I suppose, because you learn about the Reforge system being in the game, and you see like the Reforge Merchant and Reforge Stones, but then so many people are asking like, how do you Reforge? And you don't get access to it until you actually have an item that can be reforged, which would, your first time that would happen would be a legendary item at rank 6, because that's when it gains an affix that you could then reforge. So it's a little unintuitive, I guess, but that's at least a clarification there. Dread then asks about XP to level, ramps up after 30 quite a bit. What's the plan going forward for getting to 60? Is there aimed for playtime in hours? And Wyatt says, can't give a specific time amount. We'll be analyzing data and feedback from technical alpha to possibly go back and make adjustments to the 1 to 45 experience. Few high-level goals. Amount of XP and time required to level post 45 will increase in the same way that things increased after 30. We like the way that 1 to 20 feels, so that it's very fast to start up a new character and get people into the game. And then as a singular data point, the last level from 59 to 60 should be about 2.5 hours for most players. I saw a couple people talking about this answer, and they were like, whoa, 59 to 60, 2.5 hours? That's crazy. I think the one thing you have to keep in mind is mobile games are grinds. Like, that's kind of the whole point of them, is they're supposed to just take you a long time to play, progress. Like, you're supposed to check in on these games like every day and just play and make progress, but you're always aiming towards something, and you can't have it happen too quickly, because then you just check out of the game and you may never pick up the mobile game again, right? You need these sort of like continued dailies. That's why there's like daily bounties to bring you back into the game. They need you to always be checking back in. That's sort of how like mobile games keep spinning themselves forward. And so to me, this makes sense. And also as a grinder, I'm perfectly fine with this. I'm like, yes, make it take long. Make everything take long. Make everything a super grind. Because I want to dedicate the time and feel good about it. So I don't see anything too bad with this. But I definitely do agree that in the technical alpha, getting from like level 42 to 45, woo, it took a while. It took a grind. I was just like running dungeons like non-stop, and it felt like, when am I ever going to actually reach max level? And then also getting the Paragon levels takes quite some time now too, so I'm all for it though. I like it. Is it possible to use that phasing tech when we're interacting with quest givers and story points so that we don't get swarmed with mobs while unable to control our characters? I've been complaining about this a little bit. There's like a phasing thing where once you enter a zone, you're basically immune to damage for a little bit of time. Or like in a cutscene, you shouldn't be able to be attacked by monsters, but Caleb mentions that right now there's a bit of a bug in technical alpha where you can get attacked while you're doing dialogue sequence with an NPC or something, so they're going to fix that. Next, Echo Hack comes in and talks about upgrading individual items and gems. It's a major shift in Diablo Immortal from previous games. We have several upgrade systems with gems, legendaries, legendary gems, charms, reforging, salvaging. What limits are being put into place to prevent pay to win from dominating the upgrade systems? Are there more upgrade systems that will be driven by gameplay only and never influenced by monetization, like current blacksmith and salvage system? So this is the big sort of like pay to win question, essentially. And why it comes in and says, when we set out to make Diablo Immortal, one of the first tent poles that we laid down is that the gear should be earned strictly through gameplay. And that's how it currently works. Like, you cannot trade gear at all. It's all solo self-found, essentially. And even between characters, like, there's no, like, if you have a DH and a monk, like, once you find something for the DH, that's a DH item, and you can't give it to the monk. He says, I think the question understates just how important gear is, and by extension, salvage and rank up, and how it affects gameplay. It's the majority of your power. It's worth noting that I don't think the hunt part of the item hunt feels strong enough yet, and we hope to tune it more for after technical alpha. SVR alluded to this in his feedback on stats on items, and we're still waiting for more feedback from SVR. Magic attributes on items like 3% damage for your primary attack don't feel impactful enough yet. I definitely agree with that. It's like kind of too low of numbers right now. And the attributes that initially appear on an item might be a bit light compared to the attributes gained from rank up. Beyond items, Paragon's another example of a system that you can use to upgrade your character solely just by playing the game. We don't have XP boosts, and that was a conscious decision. So at its core, everything you do in Immortal is tied to gameplay. How you progress, acquire gear, earn various items, all have to be done by actually playing. There's no way to bypass that. So I guess the counter here is that why it's saying you have to put time into the game in order to like progress and get better at the game and increase your character's power and stuff like that. And I think that's sort of where it really depends on where you bend your mind on this whole thing, because with the crests and the legendary crests and stuff, purchasing those and reforged stones, like, you're saving time is the big thing. So I agree that everyone's going to play the game, and you have to play the game to progress and get better at the game, but certain people's time will be shorter to better results if they spend money on the game. And so if we're saying that the main way to improve and get gear and stuff is time, but people can like have shortcuts for time by spending money, then are they paying to win in that sense because their time investment is better per minute spent essentially than somebody that's playing completely free to play? And yeah, that's like, it's one of those, it's like a benign, to me, a benign sort of monetization system, in that it's not very predatory, but I can see issues with it from a competitive standpoint, because somebody that spends the money is going to have an advantage over you that you may never be able to catch up on, especially with how important like Paragon is in the game, and just ranking up items and stuff is too. Getting the right of fixes, for instance, getting a set family of bonuses and stuff, like that's going to make a big deal. So we'll see how it all plays out, I suppose, as time continues. Next from Echo Hack is about controller support. Caleb says, we're getting this one a lot. During technical alpha, we were just focused on making the best mobile experience for players, but however, because this is such a common request, we hope that we can test controller support in the future. So to me, I think this means they're going to make it a bit more of a priority. I've seen so many people be like, I want to use a controller. How can I use a controller? Also, emulation has popped up a lot too. And I think if the developers are hoping to get the most people playing, then they should definitely try to think about this and get controller support as a top priority. Next, Fluffy mentions about assets coming in from D3. I assume that work wasn't done to recreate these assets as they were in D3, so assuming that you're somehow importing them, then why not import everything to give a bigger pool of Elder Rift maps? And so what Fluffy means by this is that in technical alpha right now, there are only 2 dungeon types basically. There's like oh man, I can't even remember the names of the maps from D3 anymore. But there's like a Halls of Agony one, and then there's like a cave one, and we pretty much only get those 2 all the time. And there's like a jail one too. I think it's kind of like a Halls of Agony variant. And so Caleb mentions that we're still in active development, so the assets in technical alpha will not necessarily be the versions that we ship with. But talking about environments for a second, the game engine for Immortal is in many ways capable of higher quality art than what they can achieve in D3. And on top of that, there's a large talented art team that has their own creative ideas on how Sanctuary should look in Immortal. So between the tech and the team, we've invested a lot in making new zones that have never been seen before, but also recreating some zones so that they have a fresh, and you can see them in a fresh way and reflect our commitment to quality. So it's not, I guess the point here is that they're not just importing stuff that already exists, but they're actually recreating. And you can tell there's a like way higher fidelity in Immortal compared to D3. And I keep saying it, you can't really see it on streams because it doesn't translate on the way that the phone gets captured. But it's so beautiful. It's like super pristine. I think the biggest thing here though is just that when you're doing like Elder Rifts and even Challenge Rifts too, it just gets boring a little to keep doing the same maps over and over. So hopefully that's just a technical alpha thing, and as we go deeper into the testing in the game, we'll get more maps and stuff. Next up, can you talk about in detail rewarding players for exploration? Specifically, can you talk about layers and legendary monsters? These seem very interesting. So an explanation here as well is when you're just out in the world, like doing your bounties or going through zones to farm and stuff, there are a couple of random things that can occur. One is finding just monsters, right? Elites, there's blue packs, rare monsters, and there are legendary monsters. They're super rare and they look different in the map. And one thing you may have seen from some of the Immortal streams is that you can actually see enemies on the map. You can see the elites on the map, which is amazing. I wish that was in D3. There's a legendary monster that pops up every now and again, and it has a high chance to drop you a legendary item. And again, legendaries are super important in this game and pretty rare. So when you see one of these, it's pretty pog, and you can like just try to get people to come and fight it with you so they can hopefully get something as well. Like, you know, tell the guild like, hey, I got a legendary monster, stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. And similarly, lairs are dungeons that you can find while you're adventuring through zones as well. And they are pretty rewarding because they have multiple events in them, and they can reward you with regular gems, and regular gems give you lots of main stats as you level them up. And it takes a while to level them up too. Like you have to do the 3 and the 3 and the 3 and the 3 to go up the ranks. So getting those are pretty sick across both sides. So they're really fun. Wyatt mentions lairs are intended as a fun side dungeon. It's rewarding to explore when you come across them. Not quite common enough to explicitly farm them. When you're out in the world for other reasons, like a main questline or a zone trial, or you're doing bounties, you see a lair and it's like, ooh, shiny, jump in. But we don't want you to wander aimlessly looking for them as your top priority. And with legendary monsters, they're similar to lairs, but with the possibility that you may or may not ask some guildmates to come and join if you're online. Or if they're online. Love to know if you think we're close on those goals. I do think that both of these are pretty sick. I usually do try to get others to come with me if I find them, because they're like some of the most rewarding things in the game. And I don't feel like I need to farm them, but I'm very excited when I do find them. And I think the bigger issue is that I'm finding more of them because it's kind of one of the few things to do at Endgame at the moment. It's just wander zones and kind of come up with these farming routes through the zones, rather than do other activities like Elder Rifts and stuff, just because they don't feel as rewarding. So there is a bit more of a concentration on these right now, just because of a lack of activity, I think. But maybe as the game fleshes out, this sort of thing that he's mentioning will come to pass, where it'd be like nice to find, but you're not explicitly looking for them. Next, current hub and spoke model for towns. Is that similar to what we will see at release, like with Westmarch being the main hub and then minor towns in other zones? Answer, yes. Would Blizzard ever consider a pay-to-play server of Diablo Immortal where you can't pay to win? From Fluffy. Wyatt says, hey Fluffy, we really want to introduce Diablo to as many players as we can around the world. We believe the best way to do it is with a free-to-play game. It's also important for us to make one shared experience and not split the community. I was watching your stream when you were pushing challenge rifts. I know some concern was brought up that this wouldn't be as enjoyable for you when the crests are ultimately purchasable in the future. In that regard, I think it's important to note that challenge rifts are not going to be the ultimate endgame like greater rifts are in D3. I don't want to spoil anything right now. I wish you would. I want to know. But I will say it includes, and he's talking about the future of Endgame, both PvE content and activities for larger groups of players. And then he teased Fluffy about being rank 1, even though Fluffy keeps saying he's worldwide rank 1, but there's like other people playing this game in Australia who are also doing things, and Fluffy just refuses to acknowledge them. That's Fluffy. So this one I found to be interesting just because it's a preview of things to come, and mentioning that challenge rifts isn't the only thing that's going to be there for Endgame. So I'm very curious what else is happening. He says it's going to be PvE and activities for larger groups of players. Like, I don't know why these two things are separate, But that, to me, it sounds like you could have both, right? Like a PvE thing and a large group, to me would be like a dungeon, right? Like a really hard dungeon or something, like mythic versions of their dungeons or something like that. I guess it could really be a number of things though. So that's just good in general that more endgame will be coming. And obviously this technical alpha isn't for endgame testing. It's supposed to be early level and mid-level testing. So I can't wait for the next round of testing. As a endgame player myself, I'm very curious. And if it will offset the bad feeling of like challenge rifts and the competition there, and the fact that the purchasing of the crest is gonna make that feel not as great, then maybe that'll save Immortal a little bit for the players that want to play a lot. And hopefully there's other things to compete on maybe. But I just feel like the purchasing of the crest will always be looming in the background, you know? Then SVR asks about skills. There's going to be 15 more levels when we go to the 60 level cap. Will each class get more skills, or are the current skills stretched over from 1 to 45 to 1 to 60? Tech Alpha does not include all the skills that characters will be able to learn. When the final version is released, there are going to be 2 additional skills per class, and we're hoping to add more skills to each class post-launch as free expansion content. That's awesome. Right now, there definitely does feel like there's a few skills, and then among those few skills, some that are just really better than others. So it kind of seems like we're, especially on some classes, funneling into all using the same skills. So the more that exists, the better, because that means more potential for diversity. And all the skills get supported by legendaries, so that means more items to find, which is huge. More items is always good. So I'm excited to hear that there will be more skills, and even post-launch that they're going to be adding more as well. That should keep the game fresh and changing things up. So sick. There's another question about phasing, talking about reducing the number of players that you see, like when you're in the hub of Westmarch, and will it become overloaded when we add a bunch more players? Caleb mentions there are a few things that we're going to do to help combat too many players on screen. When there are a bunch in the same zone at once, then we actually spin up a second copy of the zone and divide players between the different areas. I didn't know this, so that's pretty interesting. I wonder how that's going to work for like parties and stuff though. Like if you're trying to party with people, will they be able to come into your zone if it's full? Will they get like a priority? How will you find somebody that you're trying to find if there's like too many players and you get sent into the second zone or something? Guess I should have followed up on this one. And then secondly, it says when a large number of players are on screen at once, we do some dynamic culling of players that could be farther away from you to help with performance. And we were all standing in town while this AMA was going on. You could actually see, like, if you had too many players on screen and somebody was a little further away, you would see their character name still, but their their model just wouldn't exist. You just couldn't see like their barbarian or whatever. So they're going to continue to tweak and work on that, so that points of interest in Westmarch don't get overcrowded. Which this will basically happen at like all the crafters and the NPCs that do stuff for you. Next from Echo, how will the battle pass work across multiple character accounts? If you purchase the pass, will it only work for one character per account or across all characters in that account? So this is another one of those things that is, again, very interesting because everything is separate in Diablo Immortal per character, even though you can have all these characters on your one account. So the answer here is that the current plan is you purchase the battle pass once. It unlocks those benefits and the paid reward track on all characters. So that's like an account-wide thing, like Paragon. Pretty sweet. While we're on the subject, I want to clarify we are currently thinking of a monthly battle pass that starts at the beginning of each month and ends at the end of the month. For Tech Alpha right now, the duration is 2 months just because they don't want it to reset partway through the Tech Alpha if it ends up going past December 31st, and the duration of Tech Alpha is still to be determined. They're getting lots of good data and fixing bugs on the back end as it relates to server stability and other behind the scenes stuff. So this is pretty interesting just because that actually makes that purchase a pretty good one. If you're going to be somebody that plays multiple classes, then you're getting value across multiple classes for the one purchase for the battle pass. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what it's priced at, but that's huge because yeah, you'll be able to essentially double and triple and quadruple dip on multiple characters on the same battle pass. So good. And then I guess just with the duration of Technical Alpha, I hope it goes through the whole year, or the whole year, there's like 2 weeks left, through the rest of the year, and it would be interesting if it goes even longer into 2021. But yeah, they said in the blog post that it'd be a couple weeks, but apparently, could be subject to change. We'll see. Next question, is there going to be additional zones with upcoming patches once released, or any plans for another class joining the roster? Yeah, there will be more classes. There's going to be more zones, more everything. New zones, new dungeons, more legendary items, more quest lines, more bounties, more new classes to add. All this will be a part of the game for everyone to enjoy for free without purchase. Super awesome. I wonder what other classes they would bring in, because right now we know confirmed is Barbarian, Monk, DH, Wizard, Necromancer, Crusader. So does that mean for the people that really love the Witch Doctor, they actually will do it eventually? Does that mean we'll see other classes from the past, like Assassin or like Amazon? Be interesting. Or brand new? Will they try something brand new? Who knows? Next is, will the sharing of resources be implemented into the release version of Immortal? Currently, Paragon levels are carried over to other characters, but will anything else, shared stash, other resources, etc.? So right now, why it says progression is done per character. Before I dive in, I want to caveat this is an area design that might change or it might not. We would love for more things to be shared, but the problem is that we ran into is we also have bonuses like bounties, first kill of the day, battle pass, reward you for activities on a daily, one-time basis. So we didn't want it to be that the best way to progress your main would be to have a stable of alts and then funnel the resources to your main. So this is again kind of touching on what I mentioned, that like everything is separate per character. So like when you're playing your DH and you're finding things for your DH, it's solely for your DH. And then you would go to your monk, you basically have like a brand new fresh start. All the items you're finding, all the like reagents, everything, it's just completely separate. I kind of like it that way. I can see why you would want to like say, hey, I did a bunch of work on my Demon Hunter, let me utilize that work and share some of it with my next class that I make. But I kind of like that it's a fresh start every time you start something else up. I don't know, I'm okay with this. Might be others that would want it to be different though. Nineball asks, so that after I start up a new character, is it meant to be a whole new experience with no shared currency, completely reset battle pass per character, or a limitation of the alpha, and do Paragon levels on these new characters only unlock at max? So it's kind of a similar question, but yeah, Paragon is shared across characters. It's only unlocked when the characters reach the max level. We did this so it's more meaningful of a leveling experience, like World of Warcraft when your main character is the primary focus. Want to make sure a level 33 Demon Hunter and a 34 Wizard have a reason to group and tackle hard challenges, create a social environment for the game. If the level 3 Demon Hunter had their access to their Paragon, like 300 points, then they wouldn't really feel a need to engage in leveling the same way. So that makes sense, right? Like making it kind of similar across the board when you're starting your different characters, as far as limiting Paragon to only be available to use once you're at max level. I don't have any issues with that. Next is a question from me, just kind of a curious one about have there been any things from reports or videos or streams that has surprised them with the alpha, pleasantly or unpleasantly, and what do they think about alpha and community reactions so far? White says he's super overwhelmed by the positive reception. It's been a busy 2 years since the announcement of Immortal, and it's very rewarding to be able to show and don't tell. One moment that gave him a chuckle on Sunday was opening 2 streams at once was Greg and Rax perhaps. 2 of them partied up. He was on his anonymous Smurf account and joined them in the party, and Greg booted him. Say goodbye to your alpha access, Greg. Oh my gosh, and Greg killed the CMs yesterday too in the PvP event, and Greg is just really, he's gunning for trying to not be in this alpha anymore. That's so funny. Fortunately, he heard Greg talk in stream, and he thinks he was poking around the UI. That's the excuse, right? Oh, I was just messing with the UI. I don't know why I kicked this person from the party. Got him. That's really good. And Caleb mentions that we've been saying that playing is believing mantra for a long time. It's great to finally see everybody playing and hearing reactions. Been watching multiple streams constantly for days. It's only made him more excited about making the game. I thought I was good at CR pushing until a few days ago. Yeah, it's really, what's been really cool, and I'm sorry, I know this video is like super long, but there's a lot here. And I feel like, you know, you can just treat it like a podcast almost. Just listen and, you know, you don't need to look at the screen and stuff. Just put something in your ear for the holidays. I got you covered. There's a lot of stories. It's been a fun time. And one thing that I've noticed, and we kind of talked about amongst the community a little bit, is the devs and the CMs have been going hard on Immortal for the technical alpha. Like Pez and Filthy Rich, and Wyatt and Caleb here, like they've all been playing and ranking up and like getting on the Challenge Rift leaderboards. Like Pez and I were fervently pushing the DH Challenge Rift leaderboard back and forth, and he actually beat me. I guess I'm putting this on the internet for time immemorial. He actually beat me in the first week of the DH Challenge Rift. Son of a gun. So it's really cool though to see like they are just, you know, as passionate, as serious about it, like getting in, putting in the serious amount of hours it takes to climb up those leaderboards and stuff. So it's also funny to see Caleb mention this because there are some like very talented players getting in there and really making it fun. Moving on to the next question, is there going to be endgame currency conversion? Right now he's hit a tough spot with the arcane dust blocker. This is that the yellow material I was telling you guys about earlier on alpha, and progression slows down and it's feeling pretty bad. Playing for rare drops and having thousands of reusable parts. And I'm at this point as well too. I think this is a typical thing right now where to upgrade and keep ranking up your items, it starts to cost more and more crafting materials, and one of the big ones is the yellow one, the enchanted dust. And it is hard to get because you only get it by salvaging rare items, and sometimes from some of the events in the world that will drop enchanted dust for you. I noticed that they actually hotfixed in that same chest we're talking about in the PvP zone, that I think you get when you open it like 5 enchanted dust now, so that's pretty nice. And maybe there's more stuff that they hotfixed in that has gives a better source of that. I gotta go and find it. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of a rough spot because as you want to keep ranking your items up, you need access to those materials. And you end up, like Fluffy mentions, with thousands of the reusable parts, the white materials, because you get those from just regular whites and I think even blues. So, you know, there's definitely an issue with that right now in the alpha anyways. But Wyatt mentions that tuning materials is one of the areas that we're looking at for technical alpha. Things are constantly in flux during development. Ratios of crafting materials, that's definitely an area that we want to learn more from in the test. I don't know if running out of the arcane dust feels any better than running out of the scrap materials because you're always going to be blocked by something. But one solution is to provide a conversion mechanism, but another solution might be to provide different activities for different resource types. So like instead you would do activity X to go for parts, activity Y for gold, activity Z for arcane dust. All that said, it's been awesome to see people get to that part of the game, and it's going to help inform decisions for development. I like the secondary. I like this actually, because I feel like it's always good when you can think to yourself as a player, all right, what am I going to do today, and what's the purpose of what I'm doing today? And so if I say, all right, I want to upgrade some of my items today, dang, I'm low on X material, okay, I can do activity Z, and that's going to give me X material, and I just grind that all day. And by the end of that day, I can look at my progress and be like, all right, I achieved getting this many of the material, I can rank up this many items, and hey, pretty good productive day. And then the next day, I can like forget about that and do activity X, you know, and try to get Y material or make Y progression, do it like more for Paragon, more for experience, stuff like that. So I'm always down when like I can think about how do I solve this problem and then go do an activity to solve the problem, rather than farm something I don't care about to then convert it to something else. How important are the clans going to be? They're guilds in this game. In Diablo 3, they're mostly just another looking for group channel. Are the guilds in Diablo Immortal going to have more importance? Caleb mentions that guilds are a great way to group up with like-minded players, and we have achievements to help guide some activities. I have to say, we have larger plans for social groups beyond guilds in technical alpha, beyond what guilds are in technical alpha. Can't say more than that, but we're excited to share more in the future. So it feels like we keep getting an answer like this, where there's this sort of social aspect of the game that they're really trying to key in on, like a lot of large group type stuff. And we don't know exactly what it is yet, but they keep mentioning there's going to be more for that. So I'm curious to see what that will end up being. Again, I keep going back to like raids and like MMO type stuff, where there's a reason to gather a lot of people. So I'm curious how they'll implement things like that and get more players grouping together and caring about what guild you're in and stuff like that. But yeah, there are guild achievements, which are kind of cool. They don't really seem to do anything, like there's no reward tied to them, so I'm actually wondering, this feedback right here, if the devs watch this, make the guild achievements something that give you like battle points or some kind of reward so that you feel good about working towards your guild achievements with your guild. Just seems like an untapped resource right now. Like it's cool to ding them, but that's about it. Next up, what information do you intend to add? Oh, there's another Bestiary question. So we kind of answered this one. It's going to just have lore stuff in there, not gameplay details. One of the things here that it's a caveat, though, is that this person was mentioning wanting to know more info because the elites have different abilities like they do in D3. But it's not always clear exactly what they do, right? There's like a little icon that's under their health bar, and it's supposed to tell you, like, this is the arcane one, this is the frost one, or whatever. but it's not super clear all the time until they actually use their ability for the first time. And you're like, oh, it's Waller or something. So one thing that Caleb does mention here is that the powers are dynamic every time monsters spawn, but it is a good point of feedback that we should make sure the powers are easily understood by players. Wudijo pops in to ask about low configuration for phones that are older and things like that. Caleb mentions during technical alpha, we're intentionally using a narrow list of supported devices that helps us test compatibility, performance, stability. At ship, the game will try to support as many devices as possible, and even after installing the game, you can customize graphics quality to suit your preferences. So, like for me right now, my iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is like one of the best phones on the market at the moment, it defaulted to ultra settings. I can't put it on high FPS right now because there's like a just a limitation with the technical alpha for that phone for whatever reason that you can't click that. But I've heard it's supposed to be really good. It uses up more battery, but it's supposed to be like an amazing extra oomph to the game. But yeah, you can like set the settings lower and stuff, and maybe that helps you run it on a phone that's older and whatnot. So hopefully there's hope for those of you that are holding on to older phones that you might not have to upgrade. But then of course there's always that question of emulation as well and playing on PC. We'll see. Luigi mentions next, items are the root of Diablo. Are they going to add primal items, primal items to Diablo Immortal? White says there's no plans to have primals or ancients, but that said, we do want to add more content after launch, and primals or ancients are certainly on the table. Think that systems that are more interesting when they are tied to new content, systems like that are more interesting when they're tied to new content, new ways to interact with the game. So right now there's no extra tier above legendaries, like that's the end all be all. Some people have been asking, are there sets in the game? There are not. So it's really just getting the legendaries that synergize well with the skills you want to use. And that's kind of the end game at the moment for builds. But I guess there could be in the future higher tiers or content that delivers those tiers and things like that. I do agree that I think tying any additional stuff to more content, like more activities to do, big, super huge. At BlizzCon, they said that it's going to be a fully fledged mobile game with no PC version. Is that still the case? And Caleb, this is the stock answer, by the way, whenever someone asks about is Diablo Immortal going to be on PC. Get used to reading this. We're focused on creating the best mobile Diablo experience. We're excited to bring epic action RPG elements to Diablo veterans and newcomers alike on their mobile devices. Like, I swear this is like what their media training PR person has told them to say whenever this gets mentioned. So I think it's pretty clear that they're not planning to port this to PC. It's made specifically for mobile. There is always that question about BlueStacks and emulation and stuff. I imagine once it's out, people will find a way to do that. But I think they're intending to design the game purely for people that are going to be playing on tablets, phones, etc. Wudijo next asks, if there are no primals, then what would be the other version? Would you have uniques that replace legendaries in D4 but for Diablo Immortal? Wyatt mentions that for launch, I feel like the item system we have with game-changing legendaries and the rank-up system is pretty robust, but we do need to examine and tune numerical values on attributes. There are no major changes planned right now outside of that. This is technical alpha, though. Things are always subject to change. Wudijo then asks, considerations for like another skill slot for movement or utility skill only? And Wyatt mentions, they've explored that, but there's no current plans. They're happy with the control scheme right now. Want to avoid adding too much more complexity. And yeah, I think with this one it's kind of interesting because there have been times where like I've put a movement skill on my bar just to be able to get out of tight spots and stuff. And what I kind of came to realize is that it didn't even really matter, especially in like the high tier challenge rifts. Like if you get yourself into a bad situation where you would need to use one of those skills, you're probably just going to die anyway. So it's better to just like learn to not put yourself into those situations and just kite. Because the best thing about the control system here is that you can move while DPSing. It's obviously easier for like range classes to do than melee, but it kind of negates the need for pure mobility or pure escape skills. And so it frees up your slots to then just have more DPS skills or more like utility, crowd control type skills and things like that. Having a dedicated one would be interesting though for like other activities like farming and moving around the world and stuff. But I think at that point you would just drop a DPS skill anyway, and you'd be happy to do that since you should be overpowered for like when you're just purely farming. And then last question here. Not Patrick asks, what's the design intent, pacing, and the soft limits for gameplay and the paid systems? Like for example, with gear upgrading and the amount of crafting materials Paragon and engaging with the market, so the marketplace where you're going to be selling things from player to player. Short answer from Wyatt here is that we want the game experience to be enjoyable for both players that want to be free to play and those that will spend money. All these systems interact with the player experience. How they all interact is something that we're paying close attention to. We'll be tuning them to get the balance important and get it right. And then Wyatt came in with a few extras, things that we didn't even ask about, but that he wanted to let us know. Some tidbits. So there's an auto navigation system in the game. And the way that that works is that you can like go to your map and say, I want to go to the blacksmith in this town. And then it'll just start navigating you there automatically, which is really sick. Because then you can just kind of like go through menus while you're running in the background and stuff. And I like that a lot. And it only becomes active. It's kind of like at first you're like, why can't I auto navigate in this zone? Only becomes active when you complete the main quest line for that zone. So that's why it's not obvious at first, but available later. Usually when you do a bounty, that's when you realize, oh, there's auto navigation. Mentions they could do a better job at communicating it. Next, Wyatt mentions the guild achievements. He's made a note, we need to iterate on the UI there. If you open up your guild page and you hit the arrow to expand it full screen, there's a UI for guild achievements. That is true. And you do get them, like if you're in a guild, you'll eventually notice you'll just randomly do like a dungeon with a guildmate and you'll get an achievement to pop up, and that might be the first time you realize that they're there. So that's one way, but yeah, having it be more obvious would be nice as well. And then that's it. Whew. Big AMA, lots of interesting details there. I found that the community was pretty responsive positively to this AMA. They feel like the developers are in tune with the community. The answers seemed pretty sound and full. They didn't dodge any question. They literally answered every single question that we put in the Discord channel, so that was pretty insane. Obviously a long time. This was over like multiple hours of the day yesterday. So yeah, hop into the comments. Let me know what you guys think about kind of the direction of Diablo Immortal, the questions here, technical alpha, like anything that's on your mind. Let's talk about the game a bit. I'm really into it right now, so I'm down to talk to people about it. I'm gonna go drink some water because my throat is now incredibly dry. But I appreciate you guys for hanging out. Make sure you check out the stream, twitch.tv/Leviathan111. Sub to this YouTube channel so that you can find future videos. There'll be plenty more coming to the channel. I will upload that challenge rift sort of explanation on the system and also an example of a good challenge rift clear. And then I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching this one. Adios for now.